Traci Bunkers. I am the author of Print and Stamp Lab. This is a book that I wrote to show you all different kinds of ways that you can make your own printing and stamping tools. And I'm going to show you one of those techniques in this video. I'm going to show you how to make your own moldable foam stamps. Now there is a special kind of foam you can buy to make these stamps, but I'm going to show you how to use things like flip-flops, kids, bath toys that are the letters and the numbers, these little kids puzzle pieces that you can find in the dollar store, craft foam marshmallows, what else? Oh, kids little blocks, and those foam stamps. These are all made out of the same type of foam that when you heat it up, you can press it onto something with texture and it will hold that texture to make a stamp. Then you can reheat it and it will erase the texture. You can press it on something else and make a new stamp. And it holds the texture until you reheat it. So it's really great and it's a quick and easy way to make your own stamps. Let me show you some examples. First, you can print on paper or on fabric, and so that means you can use stamp pads or paint. Now you'll need to experiment to see with your stamp which works best for you. Sometimes detailed stamps work better with a stamp pad, sometimes paint works, so you'll just have to experiment and see. I'm going to show you some examples on fabric. Here is some fabric that has both stamp pads and fabric paint on it. So you can see that there is a little bit of a difference there that gives you just a different look. Oh, I guess I should talk about how I made this stamp. So this stamp was made from a flip-flop, and I heated it up and I pressed it onto little zipper pulls. The great thing about this, if it doesn't work out, if you don't like the stamp, just heat it up and do it again. So this stamp, I don't know if you can see it that well, printed that. Then this fabric, this was printed with fabric paint. This is fabric that I dyed first, and I made that. This was with a flip-flop also, and I used little washers that I got at the hardware store. They make a really nice graphic, bold graphic. That was done with fabric paint. Here are the zippers again, and this was done with fabric paint too. I love this piece of fabric. These were just all samples that I did experimenting, and you probably can't see the detail on there, but one thing I love about the flip-flops, when you press down to after you've heated up the foam and you press it onto whatever your texture is, it leaves kind of these little wrinkly, squishy lines on the flip-flop, and they print, and they really add an interesting effect. And this fabric I printed with a stamp pad, and I love this too. It's pretty subtle, but these are skeletons. So I just picked up some skeletons at Halloween. Here's my stamp, flip-flop again, and heated up the flip-flop, pressed the skeleton into it, and stamped away. Alright, so those are my samples. Anything else? Oh, you can use anything for the texture. Like I've shown you these washers, these zipper pulls. Whenever I'm in stores, I just look for odd things that might work for making stamps, whether it's moldable foam stamps or other stamps. I found these little zipper pulls in a bag on clearance at the fabric store. Paper clips work great. Also, you can use texture sheets. I sell rubber stamps, and this is one that I designed especially for moldable foam stamps. So these are some doodles that I did, and let's see, I impressed these onto those sheets, and they make a really interesting texture. So that's one of the things I'll demonstrate. Alright, are there any questions yet? You ready to get started? Okay, come on close. First I'm going to show you how to use a flip-flop. And of course you know that flip-flops look like this when you get them. And I've got one that I've already cut part off, and so I'm going to use that one. Now with the flip-flop, there is the bottom side which has a texture, and you can print with that, but you can't mold that side. That is a permanent texture. So you want to use this side. And even though this has printing on it, it should work fine. The one I'm going to demonstrate on doesn't have printing. It has a little bit of a texture, which will kind of come through when we print, but that's okay. Alright, so to cut, you need a craft knife, and you need it to be a sharp blade. If it's not sharp, it will kind of tear. And a steel ruler. And you could measure if you wanted to. I like these, you want to be sure to have a cutting mat underneath. And I like the ones with the grid lines because you can just kind of line it up and figure out that way where to put your ruler. That looks pretty good. And you hold down with your hands, make sure your fingers are out of the way. You're going to have to go through several times since it's thick. You don't want to try to do it all in one pass. One more pass. And hold your knife perpendicular, so the blade is perpendicular to the bottom. Alright, got that. That's kind of fun with it rounded. Maybe we'll just leave it like that. Okay, so that's how you cut it. Be sure you have something to protect your surface underneath so you're not cutting your table. Let's press it on one of my texture sheets. So here's what it looks like. And let's just choose one of them. I've already cut them into their sections. And let's try this one. Now, one thing with the moldable foam, you don't want to try to use a piece that's too big, because the bigger it is, the harder it is to get an even impression. You need to get the whole thing heated evenly, and you need to press it onto the texture evenly with even pressure. Now, when you're using a rubber molding mat, you want to be sure it's out of the way when you are heating it. You're going to use an embossing heat tool. And you don't want to hold it with your hands because you'll burn your fingers. So I just do this. And this is something, it takes a little practice to know how long to do it. And if it starts smelling, you've done it too long. It should not smell bad. Then you have to work quickly because it cools fast. And then press down. If you have trouble getting even pressure, then you can use a wooden block or even a book. Now it looks like I didn't get a very good impression, so I'm just going to heat it again. Maybe I'll heat it a little longer this time. Alright, so I'll use the block to try to get a little more leverage and even pressure. And you want to hold it for a while because basically you're letting the foam cool, and while it's cooling it is molding into the texture. So let's see. You can see it a little better. Sometimes you can't really tell until you print it, so let's do a test print. Oh yeah, we got more than we thought we did. Ooh, so that's pretty cool. You can see the texture from the flip-flop is in there as well. Cool. Now, say we didn't like that, we could heat it up and do it again. I picked up this Christmas ornament last year, and I thought it would be great to use as stencils and for making moldable foam stamps. So I'm going to use one of the little craft foam marshmallows. And I'll press it onto there. Sometimes if you stand, you can get better leverage. Ooh, that looks really good. Let's test it. Ooh, sometimes they're kind of abstract. I like that. Now the great thing about these foam marshmallows, you can do both sides. Now with something that's thin, like these blocks, I wouldn't try to do both sides because it might heat up the side you've already impressed and make that design disappear. So even with the marshmallows, you have to be a little careful, but I think we'll be okay. And let's use one of these sheets again. We'll keep it out of the way while we're heating. And we'll squeeze it on. All right. Cool. Alright, so now we've got this stamp with the design on both sides. Since I love the skeleton so much, I'll show you him. Another great thing about the skeleton I have discovered, when you're heating up these little marshmallows, sometimes they blow around, and the legs will work as a great little holding device. Just an extra little tip for you there. Alright, so let's impress the skeleton. Now you can either press the foam put the foam on top of the skeleton, or you can do it the other way where you're pressing his little head into it. Now it will flatten it out since he is squishy. So let's see what he looks like. So you can see that this is basically making a negative. That's pretty funny. So if you didn't like that, I'll show you. We'll say that we don't like that we want more detail. Now the ink will not disappear, so it might be hard to see the new impression. Let's try squishing his head in there this time, doing it this way. Alright. I think I like the other one better. His ribs are better on this one, but not his head. So we could just redo that if we wanted to. His eyes came out really well. Okay, while you're here and close up, I'll show you these fabrics a little better. So here's the skeleton. Here's the zipper stamp, the zipper fabric. There's the stamp. And the one with the washers. Now say that you want to print with paint, you would put some paint onto your paint palette, roll it out with a brayer, and then use the brayer to apply it to your stamp. You could also do it with a foam brush. You'll need to experiment to see what works best. Sometimes it just depends on how deep the stamp is. Like with this one, a foam brush wouldn't work well. It would clog it up. But a foam brush worked well with this one. I don't remember if I used a brayer or a foam brush, but this stamp worked really well with the paint because it has such bold graphics. And then here was the one that showed the difference with the Memento stamp pad and fabric paint. Now I've experimented with different stamp pads on fabric, and even the ones that say they aren't permanent, they pretty much were. StazOn worked great, the Memento stamp pads worked great, and there are also the chalk fluid stamps that worked well too. So that's it for the demo. And remember, you can experiment and use just about anything for the texture. Please check out my book, Print and Stamp Lab. It has much more information in there, not only on the moldable foam stamps, but here's the section on moldable foam stamps. But it also has detailed information on making other kinds of stamps. And check out my website for the book, and I also have kits to make your own moldable foam stamps. So I've made up little kits that have different kinds of foam in it for you to play with, and also my doodle textures sheet. So check that out as well. Thank you!